double or create 20 board-certified NUCCA doctors within 5 years. You know, historically, it's about every 2 to 3 years we average one. So Marshall and I have had a number of phone calls for over a duration of time, just kind of brainstorming on how to possibly create something that hasn't seemed possible before. And what kind of emerged out of this was the Mastery Program. And it's really an opportunity for our docs to experience an acceleration in their growth, in their development, to create a more unified organization that has a higher level of technical proficiency. Just that it would be real common from office to office to have a similitude of technical excellence and quality. And we had some questions that we were discussing in the process of all of this, and the questions are, what's the organization going to look like, down the road? What would it look like? How would it be different if we actually were able to create 20 board-certified NUCCA doctors within 5 years? Because it's really a goal that, for the most part, hasn't been possible before with the way things have been. And so what we've been looking at is creating something different within our organization, and then how would that impact the future, whether it's as far as patient care, having more teachers within our organization, having more researchers, having more people to sit on boards and committees. Really, how would it impact all of upper cervical chiropractic? Because what we're talking about would potentially alter like the future of upper cervical chiropractic, and then also kind of like humanity due to what we're endeavoring. And so that's kind of what this has been born out of, and we realized that this isn't us to force anything on anybody or to have somebody choose this, but it's really the choice of the attendees or the people that are part of this process, and it's really their car to get in and drive. And what we're looking to do is provide components of motivation, practical coaching, and details of the work, as well as an opportunity for them to create, for the different doctors who are part of this, to create their own accountability groups, to help one another honor their word. And I'm like, we were talking about this the other day, I'm like massively impressed that we have 50 people who have committed to jump in and create a new paradigm, and how people are fulfilling on their certification. And certification isn't, all it is it's the endeavor to create a level of mastery in our own practice with every person we see. And this has the potential of really radically altering not only our organization and our practices and our patients, but professionally chiropractic. So, what's this all about? Well, it's about committing our lives to something bigger than us. It's about putting all of our effort, energy, focus into a goal larger than what we are, and then the fulfillment we find in doing that. And so I say all that to kind of prep for what Marshall's going to prepare and go through with you tonight. And this became evident to me when I was thinking about, like, how do you open this up? Tonight I had a patient who was in here, and they had driven a total of, it's a 10-hour round trip to come in here, and they're new, and I was just looking at their films right before I got on this phone call, and it is one of the most icky type 4s I've ever seen, with a 13-degree laterality and like a massively deformed skull and all these weird things. And I was just thinking to myself, this is why this mastery program is so important, because I feel sometimes not even equipped to deal with what's in front of me. I wouldn't want to have any less ability than what I have, or be equipped to any less degree than what I have, because of the intricacies of what we want to see happen for that patient. And so that's what this stuff all comes down to, is It's about serving the people that we take care of and doing it to the best of our ability. And so with that said, Marshall,
okay,
take it over. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Craig, and also Mary Pat. Yeah, I appreciate it. That was for all of you. That was the first voice we were hearing, and as I've really, I mean, a ton of work has actually gone into the design of this program, and as most of you are, Craig did a pretty good job kind of outlining kind of like the why we're doing it, and that was the inception of it, and what I'm faced with is that I know what my intention is and what we're going to be working on accomplishing tonight, and I'll tell you what that is in just a moment as far as really the intention of tonight's webinar. But just to start with, I am like so far out of my comfort zone in what we're standing for. When we first started this, there was like no way that the goals that we have taken on were going to happen. And then we had this contextual change, which we're going to be talking about, where all of a sudden, what we saw was not only the possibility for the organization, but the possibility for the fulfillment of the dreams of the people who are currently registered for the mastery program. As Craig mentioned, there's 50 people. It's actually just under. It's I think it's 48 or 49 individuals that have registered for it.
This is all on the Nick.
Hello. So somebody's not muted. It sounds like, but so there's a couple things like this is foundation stuff that it's a long program. I'm committing myself to a year of this program, and it'll consist of almost monthly webinars and a number of other things. But to start with, there's a couple things that that we need to kind of like set up. I mean, the way that I participate very often in the monthly board meetings we have and this and that. I'll have the telephone, I'm on the phone, the computer's on, the television's on, there's all this stuff going on around me. And my request is that you really, I'm going to have you actually get to the edge of your seats, because we're not just talking about something here. We're actually going to be speaking for and building something that if my intention is fulfilled and if all of our intention is fulfilled, this is going to be a life-altering event that when you go in your office and you're taking care of your patients and you're moving through certification, life is not going to be the same for you. There's going to be a new freedom to act and be in a way that you may not have ever experienced before, or you've had flashes of it and you just didn't know how to sustain it. So when we're on an airplane, you sit down, and just as an example of listening, they start talking about, okay, here's how you put on your seatbelt and everything else, and what you do is you're going through the magazines, you're doing all this other stuff, and you're not really paying attention. And this is actually true. I had a patient today, and part of his injury because he was on a plane and it dropped 9,000 feet, and all the havoc that came out that arose during that time. But so the plane, imagine you're on a plane, it's business as usual. All of a sudden, there's this big bang, or something happens. Now the flight attendant comes out and she starts to talk to you about, your seatbelts, talk to you about the oxygen, talk to you about safety procedures. Where's the exits? All of a sudden, your attention and listening totally change, because your life, it's no longer business as usual. Your life is actually at stake, and you're going to pay it, and you're like listening for, what do you do next? And that's how I really would like, that's my request, is that you participate in the next, 45, 50 minutes that we have on this webinar, and be taking a look at, well, what's at stake for you? How is this going to work out? And really, kind of move to the, the edge of your seat and be listening for what's possible. So if, I'm not used to also talking on a webinar where I don't have a face to look at, some response from an individual, and we're going to open it up for some questions later. But so that's my request, that you bring that type of listening to what we're going to be doing over the next, like I said, approximately 50 minutes. And before I get started and really talk about what the intention for tonight's webinar is, I just want to just slow down for a second and let you know that It's been brilliant. I've had a chance, I know Dr. Lipinski's had a chance, that we've read through all of your applications. I've read through every single one of them. I've read what you've had to share. I've read what you're committed to. I've read what's come up for you, what's held you back, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and I am so moved and inspired by who this group of doctors are that are currently engaged in this program. It blows me away. And I just really want to share that. So who you folks are is just a remarkable group of individuals that are currently all kind of going down a river together. And it's going to be something that this organization has never, ever seen before. And there was some pre-program reading and video, and for, I'm hoping that most of you, if not all of you, actually were able to download the article by Professor Jensen on Integrity Without It, Nothing Works. It's a profound piece of work. And also the video by Carrie Granger that really talks a bit about leadership. It's really brilliant. It's a brilliant video. But yet the main thing that I really wanted you to take out from that is what she saw about context, on how you see what we say actually shapes what we see. And because we're going to be talking about that, if you haven't gone through it yet, my request is that you take the time to go through those things, because those are going to be essential, absolutely essential pieces to this to the program to have it work out for you. And the only thing that I disagreed with Craig, and he'll speak in a slightly different English than I will be tonight, is that he says, this will be motivational. And you'll see later, it's not going to be motivational. If you come away motivated, that's fine. If you come away inspired, that's great. But this is not about motivation. It's not about inspiration. And we'll talk about that more as we go. But I just want to kind of clean that up. And now I want to tell you what the intention for tonight's webinar is. And so again, for those of you who have completed the homework, thank you very much. For those of you who haven't, please put some structure around it and complete it. So the intention for tonight's webinar is to start to create a foundation for candidates engaged in NUCCA certification, so they have access to freedom in expressing yourselves as masters in this work. This course, while it's for doctors who are candidates engaged in certification, this is not a course necessarily about certification. This is a course about mastery in the NUCCA work. And if a doctor is not participating in the certification work, the odds of them becoming masterful in this work probably isn't going to happen. So, I'm going to say it again. I just want you to get it. To start to create a foundation for candidates engaged in NUCCA certification, access to freedom in expressing yourselves as masters in this work. And you can take a look at, well, what would that be like if I'm in my office and I'm working through this, and I have I got certification going, I got my patients here, and what I'm committed to is expressing myself as a master in this work. All of a sudden, it starts to shape the way the things that show up around you. And the second intention for tonight's webinar is to create a conversation for workability and wholeness. So Craig touched on why the mastery program. One thing that we notice is that there's really a breakdown in the effectiveness of our education development. Prior to this, doctors could be engaged in certification, they register for it, but the structure to fulfill on it has always been weak. And very often they'll come home, say, inspired by what they saw in a seminar while attending the seminar. And then they get back, and all of a sudden the inspiration's gone. They intend on sending in X-rays. Time goes by, something doesn't happen, and there's no structure that actually occurs. So what the intent of the mastery program is designed to transform your actionable availability of the certification process as your natural expression. So instead of the certification process coming up as something on your to-do list, something that you have to do, something that's heavy and arduous, and virtually anything will get its way. This is designed to transform, not change, not like slightly alter, but literally transform it to where your participation is part of your natural expression. I mean, when I read an application form and the doctor writes, I can't imagine a more exciting or more important work than allowing people to express their innate intelligence in my office. So how is that going to get expressed? And that's the purpose of the mastery program, is to increase your capacity for mastery of the NUCCA technique. Craig mentioned the aging group of certified doctors. You take a look at 5 years from now. The vast majority of certified doctors, at least half of them, are going to be in their mid-60s. There's going to be a decline in the number of doctors at a particular point that we're not going to have that same group that's able to lead, instruct, carry out the research, be the mentors for others, be at the schools, talking, teaching, doing all the things that are really essential for the growth and development of this organization. And see, here's the thing about this aging group. Like, a farmer doesn't need to be told when it's time to plant or harvest. Who he is plants and harvests at the time in which it's appropriate. Who we are is a commitment to something larger than ourselves. It's the appropriate time to take the appropriate action, and farmers will work throughout the night to make sure their harvest is coming in or the seeds are being planted, because the time is ripe for that. And the time is ripe right now to create a breakthrough in developing our leaders, our teachers, our mentors, our researchers for upper cervical chiropractic. It's really a challenge for me to walk around my office and come back to the computer to change the screen. I'm sorry. So the demand from patients. So after reading, and I hope most of you, if not all of you, should be 100% of you, after reading Michael C. Jensen's article, Without Integrity, Nothing Works, he breaks down word in 6 different areas. And word number 3 is doing what's expected. That's integrity and wholeness. So when we look at the word, we'll go over this a few times, we're looking at just, what's expected of us. And patients expect that they expect you, they expect their doctor has gone the distance in regards to their training. So we're going to be bringing integrity to our word in a number of different areas, because integrity on a positive model is workability, and it leads to an opportunity for performance. And we want to be masters in this work. You've got to be able to perform. You've got to have workability. Without those 2 things, there's just no way that it's going to work out in the way that it could. Living your life authentically. This is a really interesting one. So based on reading all the, again, the registration applications, what you're up to, what you're committed, everybody who is on this webinar is really up to doing something special. There was an area where you had to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. How important is NUCCA board certification and mastery in the NUCCA work to you? And more than half, I think it was close to 30 individuals, wrote it was a number 10. That's how important mastery and board certification is to you. And then, a good portion of the next ones were 9s, and then there were a few 8s. And then there were 2 individuals who had it a 5. But everyone else was 8, 9s, and the vast majority of it 10s. So here's the thing. If who you are, and that's what we're going to be talking about, who you are and who you're creating yourself to be and who you stand to be, is who you are is, I'm repeating myself, is committed to making a difference in your patients' lives to the best of your capacity. That is who you are authentically. That is if I am successful, if we're successful in this program, when you walk in your office, that's who's going to be present when you walk in the door. When all chaos is breaking loose, and you're up against a tough case, that's what's going to be present, is the authentic commitment that you are for the difference that you can make for the patient, and moving through some of these stages of certification are what it's going to take to get to some of those levels where that becomes present for you. So Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines authentic as real or genuine, true and accurate, conforming to the original. The root word auth for author, it's something that you're generating who you are for what it is that you're committed to. And that's really what this program is about also. Now, the future research and leadership. All the applicants, again, there is an area, what would you like to be engaged in? Almost everybody listed something: instruction, research, certification, leadership. There are opportunities for each and every one of you. And if you, in watching the video on being a leader in the effective exercise of leadership by Carrie Granger, one of the things that came out of that is that you don't have to be at the top. It's not a top-down view. Anyone could lead at any level, and there are going to be opportunities within this mastery program for a number of you who really want to be leaders to take on that role immediately. And finally, what Craig also mentioned is being given being by something bigger than ourselves. So when you think about BJ, Gregory, my dad, they weren't, when you think about where am I, you could point to, most people point to their chest. They go, well, I'm here. Well, they had bodies, but their personal concern, they stood for something larger than themselves. They were committed to a world that they could impact. And that's true for, you could look at any of the great leaders. Who they weren't just their bodies. They were the vision and the actions and the speaking that they had for something that produced the world in which other people got to show up in powerfully. But it's interesting when we take a look at being, because we don't often talk about who am I being. But being, so it's just a different type of languaging it. But you could look at your child, and if they take another child's toy, you go, you're being selfish. So there's a way of defining somebody's actions, so their being leads to their actions. But there's all kinds of being. There's being masterful, being courageous. Now, here's the thing about being courageous. You can't be courageous without fear. If you're being courageous, if you're running out into a battlefield and you're not afraid, that's not courage. That's just idiocracy. Courageous is, so these things go along with all the things that you think would be counterproductive to them. But that's what gives rise to these things. So being committed to one's own growth and development. It's completely different from just showing up and doing something. So let's talk a little bit about the mastery program. And again, what we're doing today is it's a kind of a foundational period, but we're going to get to something that has even more nuts and bolts to it. But so let's talk about what the mastery program is not. It's not a lecture series, and I already talked to you about that, about the listening that you can bring to this that makes a difference in your life. And so if you're sitting back and just listening to me like I'm just lecturing about a program, you're going to miss the value of it. And that's not the intention of this. That is certainly not the intention of the mastery program. It is not more seminar content. Most likely, we're probably never going to be reviewing x-rays. We're not going to show how to find an attachment point. We're not going to show you how to refine your skull lines and talking about biomechanics or any of that. This is an ontological look. We're going to be dealing with who do you have to be in order to accomplish what it is that's in your heart and what you're truly after and what you're creating for yourselves to be. So if those of you who signed up because you want to get more hints on biomechanics or how to do something like that, good news is you stumbled into something even better. All that is available within the seminars, and NUCCA is still even working at developing more outreach, whether or not it's videos or this or that that'll give you that. But what the mastery program, it's not about that. It's not. I mentioned this. It's not motivational, inspirational. It's not inducement. It's not conjoil. Is it conjoil? I forgot. Sorry, I'm screwing up that word. It's not persuasion. It's not encouragement. So why isn't it all these things? And here's why. Because very often, I would be speaking at the NUCCA seminars, I'd be talking about certification. I'd be, again, talking about, but actually I was talking for, most people thought I was talking about it. And they would leave inspired. And they would be inspired for a few days. And all of a sudden, the office gets busy. All of a sudden, things come up that weren't in part of the plan. And they all wake up one morning and they're no longer inspired. So what happens to their word, their commitment for what they were up to doing when the inspiration isn't there? You know, when a mother is, I have one of the gals in my office has a couple small kids. The other day, she had to come and work a little bit late because one of her kids were throwing up. I got news for you. She wasn't inspired to clean up all the throw up. But who she is as a mother, as a commitment to the quality of the life of her kids, was present in that space, and her actions were correlate to that commitment. So while some of you might leave this webinar having motivation, having some inspiration, I'm hoping for something more for you than that, because when that stuff's not present, I want you to have access to continuing to be in action for what it is you're committed to, for what it is that your life is about. Tips, again, not going to be about tips, although, you know, there might be a rare moment, but for the most part, not a lot of tips in the mastery program. It's an inquiry into. You're going to have to be doing some thinking. You're going to have to be delving into what's in the background of what shapes your view and your actions, and what makes action and mastery available to you in your life and within your practice. In the stand, speaking and listening about. Now let's talk about this just for a moment. If you think of a ball game, there's a particular type of speaking that the fans in the stands have. So they're talking about this, and they're talking about that, how the batter did, the catcher, whether or not the call was right at home base, you know, how they think it should go, how the coach is doing, you know, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. They're just talking about the game, and they might be enjoying it, and there's nothing wrong with talking about stuff. It's great to talk about stuff. But this is about being on the field. There's a whole different conversation. So what's going on the field is the coach is laying out a plan. The players are listening for what he's saying. You understand? Not what he's saying, but for what he is saying. And his speaking creates a new view, a new possibility for them to move into as a team. And it's completely different from speaking for something and speaking about something and listening for something. And that's what's going to be needed within the master program, is continuing to listen for, how is this going to make a difference in my life? And while we're a few minutes into this program, you might think, well, I really haven't got anything out of this. I'm listening for it, but my life still seems to be about the same. Don't worry. It's more of a marathon than a sprint. Let's talk a little bit about, and if I'm going too fast, I'm sorry. I know what I've got, and my goal is to really give you guys and gals a lot today, and then you're going to have stuff to work on after this. So what the mastery program is, it's an ontological model for learning and personal development. Again, taking a look at ontological is really the study of being, the study of being a human being, and we're going to be taking a look at how that works for you within your practice and within your life. It always spans out. You can't just have one area that we're concentrating on where it doesn't impact everything. So the intention in the mastery program is to create an environment that calls forth effective actions as your natural self-expression. It's designed to create a clearing where you and what you're committed to arises or shows up. When we were talking about the possibility of NUCCA's goals of producing some certified doctors, we looked at that and we said, there's no way that's going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, a new context came about in the conversation where we saw like a possibility that we've never seen before. I want you to know, in that moment, my life was 100% booked. There's no time. If you look at my schedule, it would almost be there's zero time in my schedule to do anything in addition to what there was. But I couldn't not take it on, because all of a sudden something opened up that's a natural expression of what's possible. And all of a sudden, there's time in my schedule to do something that I wouldn't have had time for otherwise, and that can happen within your practice. When you don't think you have time for that second post, when you don't have time to do this, when you don't have time to do that. So we're going to be taking a look at what people are present to when they're being masters at what they do. An actionable access to mastery in the NUCCA technique. And I'm sorry, I've got a call coming through my phone that you'll hear, maybe you hear beeping, maybe you don't. But this is where we're going to be delving or looking into our own lives. On the court, back in our practices, distinguishing different states of being, leaving us free and empowered to take on what we're committed to. On the court coaching, practice, and development. So we've talked about the article, integrity without it, nothing works. We're going to be really taking a look at the power of our words, declaring and speaking for who you are and what you're committed to. Listening has almost as much power as speaking. So for right now, I'm just going to leave that alone because I know we need more time towards some of these other things coming up. But you know, this area of listening, I just want us to take one step. I want you to know that when we read what it is that you're committed to, what it is that you're committed to in your lives, what it is you're committed to accomplishing with this within this course, it's listened to in a particular way that it's heard as your word, as that's who you are. And I want you to know, as we relate to you, that's who we're relating to you being, is that commitment. Here's the one in front of me. It just says, I love this work. Here's another one. There, I personally commit to upholding myself to the professional expectations of knowledge and applications skill befitting a genuine practitioner of NUCCA. Listening for the possibility that is the difference that could also be made in relationship to the way that we relate to one another, the way we hold each other accountable for who we are and what we're up to. An authentic stand for the greatest expression of who you are, the NUCCA organization, and the lives of our patients. So when somebody says, what is the mastery program? And you could say, it's an authentic stand for the greatest expression for who we are, the NUCCA organization, and the lives of our patients. We're committed to something really big, and in order to accomplish it, we're going to need a different set of tools because the old way that we're managing it and going about it wasn't working. In the video by Carrie Granger, she talked about context, that speaking changes the way that we see and how it changed her life and the difference it made with the time that she was, and actually she's still in the Air Force, working in actually a leadership role. So let's talk about context for a second. So the definition of context is the parts of a discourse that surround a word or passage that can throw light on its meaning. The interrelated conditions in which something exists or occurs. So context, I've mentioned it a couple different times, the view that we have all of a sudden opens up possibilities for things to exist or occur, or in the same way, if you have a context that is undistinguished, that context, and it could be about your patients, it could be about your kids, it could be about almost anything, that context will actually perpetuate itself, moving forward to where it actually creates the future in front of it. I mean, some of us, you know, I had this context when my patients would come in and they'd talk to me in the room, and my context was, like my background was, I wish they'd just stop talking so I could adjust, check them, adjust them, and have them go on their way. You know, I knew what I'm sorry to admit it, but that's kind of how it was. And I had to take on a context, actually a different listening, like what my patients said, context that what my patients say matters. And start listening to them and getting what it is that they're saying and the impact that what they're sharing has on their life, whether or not they're telling me about what they've been suffering with, what they're concerned about, or they're telling me about the breakthrough that they've had as a result of being adjusted. It's a completely different way of being in which something occurs. And the fact is the context is decisive. I just mentioned it. It actually creates a future. So there's been a context that how people have seen the NUCCA organization over time. Not the NUCCA organization, certification. It's been seen with criticism, cynicism, that we've been elitist, we're exclusive, we're selected individuals, we're arrogant, and there's agreement about it, right? So that's some of what's existed in the past, and it's a context. It's a way things occur from the background of that viewing. And we could take a look at for yourselves too what social or group views in regards to certification, and this is of value for you to look at, have disempowered you in the past, because there's a chance that some of that still kind of lingers and will shape to the degree to which you're going to participate within certification as well as the mastery course. Here's a question: what has been a pattern of thoughts that have kept you from fulfilling what are you sincerely, passionately committed to? So this is really interesting, and that is, again, across the board, I mentioned that, let's just say the average participant in the mastery course is committed at a level of a 9 to 9.5, and yet the speed in which things occur in regards to doctors moving through certification is a little bit more like a 2 or a 3. So somewhere there's a context, there's a background that has an effect on the fluidity of those actions. And here's the question, the second question is, how have you listened to the possibility that the certification program is? And hopefully what we're going to be able to do together is create a space to which mastery is the standard of the organization, not just held by a handful, which they have a particular view of, that others have a particular view of this, but mastery is our standard. And that's a context. So let's see what, and you could help invent that. It's not just my job to invent the context for you. So how it's been in the past, just real quick, is what's held you back? What shaped your view? I'm going to go through this, and you're going to start to hear something. Here's what's stopped doctors from participating, sending in their films, being a part of certification on this call. This is the passion of people. Fear of rejection, lack of confidence, being a single mom. I changed to digital x-rays, running my practice, x-ray placement, biomechanics. Biomechanics, that's a level 1 candidate. Have stopped that person from submitting their x-rays. You start to kind of hear the ridiculousness of the background that has an effect on our actions. Not getting the reductions. Financial aspects, not getting the reductions. Time, having a family, consistency, making sure my practice succeeds. Financial problems, not being disciplined, too long time between reviews, and that's being managed. Absence of a plan. I mean, I could go through this, and I'm not going to, but you kind of get the amount of morass, the number of things that could get in our way as we're trying to move successfully through a program. Swollen pride of the leaders, procrastination, elderly patients. I mean, just looking at that, I don't want anyone to get a headache, but it could give you one. That's the life that we wake up into when we kind of go into our practice to some degree. We've got this commitment to move through a program, to develop mastery, and all of a sudden this stuff shows up. Suppose we had a way of living outside of this background. When in the video, Carrie Granger said, when they went from, we need to survive, we're surviving our deployment. It's 130 degrees outside. We're working in a bomb dot shelter. All these things are going on. They had a 58% success rate in getting their planes to fly. And then she had a moment, and I'm trying to think of a word. I'll think of it in a moment. Where she saw, when we don't fly, people die. And everything in that moment changed. Everything on the screen in front of you changes when the context for who you're about and what you're committed to starts, when you're aware of what that context is, when you're creating a context that empowers your authentic desire to develop mastery in this work, all of a sudden all the stuff gets managed. I'm not saying that if you had a baby, it's not going to take you out of the practice for a few months. It will. There are certain things that will get in our way. But how fast do you get back up on the horse, get back up, and get back in action toward what it is you're committed to based on who you are. So in the course, we're going to be having a new context, a listening for who you are and what you're committed to accomplishing. A listening for who you are committed to becoming. And I'll just throw this out as masters in this work. Being part of a team, a family, a communication, an organization, all of you are part of a much larger team right now. 50 dedicated doctors passionate about your growth and development. Being in action for something bigger than ourselves. A future of chiropractic that's being invented, and it's being developed right now on this call, in this moment, in your seats. That future is being developed. And here's a tip. I told you there won't be a lot of tips, maybe an occasional one. Here's a tip. If you're not lit up and excited about what you're doing, the context that is impacting you as either a linguistic or a functional constraint, meaning that if you've got, in the x-rays that you want to go through and you want to get them submitted, you want to get them reviewed, you want to learn, you want to develop yourself, but yet it appears like it's work, yet it appears like it's too much trouble, yet it appears as something other than your own unique self-expression, there's some background constraint that's having an effect on you, and all it takes is really stopping and looking at it. When I was working on this program, it was last Wednesday, and it started feeling like work. And then I realized, as I was working on it, I'm kind of like going, oh, I got to do this. Then I realized in that moment the possibility that this program is for people. It could move me to tears if I let it. And in that moment that I got back in touch with the possibility of what this program is, for what you're committed to, for the difference it would make in our organization, for the difference it would make in chiropractic, for the difference it would make in the people's lives that we take care of, all of a sudden what seemed like work turned back into my own passion, my own self-expression, my own commitment towards something larger than myself. And that's the difference. So that's a linguistic or functional constraint. And we'll be going over that more as we develop in the program. So let's talk about integrity, a positive model. So Webster defines integrity, a quality of being complete. Again, I hope that all of you have downloaded Michael Jensen's, you've read the article, and I'll tell you what, his organization that he founded, the SSRN, there's a 47-page article that he's written on integrity. What you downloaded was an interview with him about that article. And I mean, I've got more piles and inches thick of more reams of paper in front of me, but it's called Integrity, a Positive Model that incorporates the normative phenomena of morality, ethics, and legality. It's an abridged. There's a much, actually, longer version of it. But in his positive model, again, there's 4 areas. It's what you, and this is your word. This is where your word exists. And there's a difference between your word and integrity. Integrity is this and only this. Integrity has to do with wholeness. Now, if you think of a bicycle wheel, that it has spokes. When all those spokes are tightened evenly, and that wheel is like perfectly tuned, it has integrity. That integrity leads to workability, and that workability leads to an opportunity for performance. If you start to loosen some of the spokes, it loses some of its integrity, it loses some of its workability, and it loses its opportunity for performance. You loosen enough of the spokes, it has no functional integrity at all. It loses its workability completely and has 0 performance. In the area of word, so word, like bicycle wheel, are not integrity. Integrity is really a measure of wholeness, where your word is your word, and it's just like that bicycle wheel. And here he's broken it down into 6 different areas: what you said, what you know, what's expected of you, what you say is so, what you stand for, and standards that have to do with legalities and moral, ethical, community standards, things of that nature. So we're going to be dealing with really at least mostly 5 out of 6 of these. But when I read what you statement about your personal commitment, what you said, That's your word out in the world. What you stand for is what you wrote here. And the goal is to get some wholeness, get some functionality behind your word. So if I were to go back and we look at that page, the morass of all the things that get in people's ways, when your word stands as something that's more important than the minutia that happens around us on any given day, there is nothing that could fundamentally get in your way to fulfill on who you are in your dreams of becoming a master. He said, in talking to, you could look it up in a video that he's talking to Sands Business School, he talks about by just bringing the integrity model into a corporate structure, it increases productivity and effectiveness from 100 to 500% without changing anything else. Means that all we have to do is bring some power to our word, and you can have an increase in from 100 to 500% increase in your effectiveness. And what difference will that make as you're becoming a master in certification? There's actually, it's a longer story, but there's a voice in the back of the room saying that, talking about Mike Jensen, he goes, Mike lowballed you, as another professor was questioning him how he came up with that, and the fellow was the CEO of Reebok. And at the time when he applied this model of integrity to Reebok, their stock prices not only went up, I think, 5 times or whatever it was, from $7, I'm probably not 5 times, but from $7 to like $37. He said he lowballed you. The productivity, the change is just beyond your belief. And here's the first place, and now this, all right, I hope you all are on the edge of your seats. Here's the first place that you give your word. Are you ready? It's that you are a person of integrity. You tell yourself, who I am is a person of integrity. Not, again, not integrity, if I have it, I'm good. If I don't have it, I'm bad. It's who I am is a commitment to workability. It's a commitment to wholeness. I use this language with my patients all the time when I talk about the integrity of their nervous system, the integrity of their body, that without it, it's broken down, it's lacking integrity, it lacks workability, it lacks the ability to perform in a healthy fashion. That's what it is. It's not about a good or bad or right or wrong. Now, there's an area that he talks about, a veil of invisibility, and here's what creeps in that has our word break down, that we're no longer as effective as we were. So word goes out of existence. So one is integrity is a virtue. If you start to relate to yourself or you start to relate to each other in this program, you said you would send those x-rays in by when, and you don't do it. That is a virtue like they're bad, you're right, they're wrong. It has no power. Absolutely ineffective in the area of performance. So integrity is a positive model versus a moral or virtual or virtue. It's right versus wrong. From this context, again, there's no workability. Self-deception about being out of integrity. Here's the, unfortunately I can't share this other story, but it's really interesting. Well, I'll see how fast I could do it. There's an experiment where they show a subject 2 different pictures of 2 different women, and they go, which one do you like better? And the guy goes, well, I like that one. And then with a sleight of hands, they hand them the one they didn't like. And then they say, now tell me why you like this one better. And the person will start to come up with the reasons why they like that one better, and it wasn't the one that they picked. We have stuff that goes on in our life, and we come up with reasons and rationalizations of why it is a particular way. Have you ever been late somewhere and someone says, well, why were you late? Well, the traffic was heavy. Well, it was raining. Oh, my kids were crying. And you have all these reasons why you were late, and what's so is you said you would be somewhere at a particular time and you weren't there. That's just what's so. And how you could manage something like that with integrity, and that's in Michael's article, is you call ahead and go, look, I said I'd be there at 8, and I noticed I'm not going to be able to get there on time. I just wanted to give you a heads up so you can manage things effectively. That's the integrity. You gave your word to something, and you found out you couldn't keep your word, and then you called and managed it. And say, so I will be there. You could count on me being there. I should be there by 5 after, or whatever else. I told you I would send my x-rays in. to you on, they would leave my office on Friday and you should have them on Monday. I didn't do it this week. I really let the things within the practice have they just took over, and I didn't get to the x-rays. I'm calling you to let you know I will have them sent out to you by Wednesday of next week. That's integrity. It's not about your word being bad or good, but you're not making up a story. You're not coming up with, well, actually, this is a little bit more in this has more to do with the veil and different area veil of invisibility. But, you're not making up something to cover your tracks, which is actually more that, well, I guess that would be self-deception, I'm sorry. So here's the belief that integrity is keeping one's word. So it's not. Integrity is the management of one's word. One's word is one's word, and that's all it is. I will be there when. When I helped John Dunn go through certification, and when I saw that certification was more of a training program than it was a testing program, I wanted to test it, and John Dunn was never, ever, ever going to get certified because he wasn't the kind of guy. The context that he had is he wasn't that type of person that he could do it. And all I did is I'd call, and we just managed his word. And I helped him review films, and then he would send in his films to Dr. Birdie for review. But I'd say, all right, send me when can you send me your films? He'd go, I'll send them to you on Friday. And here it is, like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and I haven't got them. I call him up. John, did you send me the films on Friday? No, I didn't. Okay, well, let's manage. When can you send me your films? Yeah, I'll send them to you next week. And then sometimes another week would go by, and he wouldn't do it. But it's just about managing his word. And then he goes, and then all of a sudden he goes, okay, don't worry, you have my word. I'll send them by this Friday. And then he would manage it, and he'd send them in. And it wasn't that long of a period of time before he actually gained mastery in this work, just from keeping his word and managing it with that inside of integrity. So again, integrity and your word are two different things. And here's another thing that comes up that gets in the way in regards to our word is fear of acknowledging that we will not keep our word. It's easier when you've said you will do something by when. Sometimes just, you're going to call the people in your group. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. Well, maybe if I don't call, they just won't notice. Maybe it's not that important. Maybe it's, whatever we make up about it. So we just don't do it instead of saying, yeah, it was me that, I said this. I have kids. Kids will do this. They'll, did you take out the garbage? Well, they just don't manage it as their word. Not as, at least, maybe some kids do, some kids don't. But so fear of acknowledging that you will not be keeping a word is a breakdown in managing your integrity with wholeness. And let me see what else it was that I wanted to talk about as we're moving toward the 9 o'clock hour. Integrity is not seen as a factor of production. So we've already talked about the bicycle wheel. The Kerry Granger, they talked about their 58% effectiveness in getting these planes to fly. They described that the planes had like different degrees when it was fully in integrity, when it was whole, complete, and it could function. Then it had a particular mission capacity. If it didn't have all that, then it had a different level of mission capacity. If it didn't have even less than that, the integrity was even lower, then it didn't fly at all. So integrity is a factor of production. You guys want to start producing the results that you want to produce. You want to become masterful of this work. Use integrity. Use your word to shape what's taking place around you in a way that leaves you empowered. Not doing a cost benefit of keeping a word. There's two places this comes into place, and it's 4 minutes to 9. I just want to acknowledge, and we might go 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 minutes afterwards. I apologize if that inconveniences anyone. But before you agree to something, that's when you do a cost-benefit analysis. Before I took on creating a mastery course with Dr. Lipinski, I needed to do a cost-benefit analysis. Do I have the time in which I could actually manage this? And in some ways, the answer was no. But I still wanted to take it on. But once you give your words, here's an example, and it's not going to be having anything to do with, okay, here, I'll keep it in certification. You say that I'm going to send in x-rays by a particular point. I'm going to do this in regards to working with my, mastering my practice. And all of a sudden, again, it's something, who knows? You get invited to a party when the night that you were going to be working on your x-rays. And you go to the party. Seemed like it was a lot more fun. You did a cost-benefit analysis. Party seemed a lot better than sitting home and doing your x-rays. So the time to do it is before, not after you've given your word, not if you want to have your word have power. Let's look at existence structures. So what happens to your word after it leaves your mouth? Very often, we don't have any place that it actually gets written down. We speak in a sloppy way. We could have taken on this program and go, yeah, let's do a mastery program. Okay, fine, let's do it. Talk to you next week. All right, bye, it was fun. And there's no structure to it. We, on a very early basis, said, all right, we're going to take this on. Our first webinar is going to be, actually our first webinar, we thought it was going to be in the middle of February. And then we saw, well, we couldn't keep that. So then we made it, so obviously it's tonight. But so the way you keep your word in existence, you have to have some rigor to it. What and by when? Where does it show up for you? Who else is involved? Who will support it? And you're going to have access to these slides. You're going to be given a code that you can review these for yourself. And what is the first step? So when you take a look at your word actually exists as a future possibility that hasn't happened yet. How do you bridge the gap between the moment it's said and that future possibility? A long time ago, before most of you were born, I remember actually JFK, John F. Kennedy, saying we will have a man on the moon within the decade. In 10 years, we will accomplish that. And we didn't have the technology, the spaceships they were sending up had the computing power of a Furby, and there's no way that it even looked like it was plausible. But he stood for it. His word was cast for something in the future, and then it was just a matter of honoring that word and having structures in which, within X number of years, it was realized. Does that make sense? Okay, I can't hear you say yes, but I'll assume it does. Participating in the mastery course. This is really important. So some of you might be on this webinar and go, you know what, this isn't for me. I want to just, I don't want to be held to my word. I don't want to take on, whatever. I get the health integrity thing, but I'm not. I thought this was just going to be tips and techniques. I want to, see how to mark X-rays. So you got to choose your own participation, which you already did kind of when you registered. But I really want, now that you've had a chance to be a part of it, you get to really see, is this something that you are committed to? Because a year from now, which is just, again, this is how long I'm committed to. I'm not saying it's not going to go on longer than that, but a year from now, will we have everyone that says today, yes, I will be in that course, and you could count on my participation, playing full out throughout the course of this next year? Is that you? And one way to do that, you could take a look at what's at stake for you, and then, is this something that would help empower what it is that you stand for? How you're choosing will be heard, meaning that if you say you're in, I got that you are in, and I'm going to hold you accountable to it. You're going to have other people holding you accountable for it, not like a right or a wrong or an obligation, but your word has power, and it's not only you honoring your word, but it's us honoring your word as yourself. So that's how it's going to be heard. And we're going to need some structure to support that. There were over 20 doctors that listed that one of the things that they wanted to do was be a leader within the NUCCA group. We're going to set up support groups that, I'm not 100% clear on the structure, if it's a weekly call or every 2-week call, that you guys need to talk with one another. You got to get together, and we need 10 group leaders. If we've got almost 50 doctors, I need 10 docs that are willing to take on the mantle of being the person who helps manage their group. And there's going to be an opportunity for those doctors to be on coaching calls that will help guide them and coach them not only for what's going on kind of like in their own lives within the context of this course, but how to coach and be with the other people that they're with. So if you want to be a part of the leadership aspect of it, let Mary Pat know. I've got her email here, and you actually all have her emails because she sent you all the information to be on this, be on the course. So I need 10 people, you know, I'm asking that 10 people step up and take this on. And I would appreciate it, and it's a great opportunity for you guys to start building muscles that will, I promise you, will make a difference. You know, it's interesting that, you know, my wife is going, why do you need to be doing this? You know, because she sees how busy I am. We've got the new pillow company. I've got my practice. I've got all these things going on, and she goes, why are you doing this? I go, I guarantee you. Here's the deal. You know, it's like, you know, it's not some. These aren't paid positions, obviously, and you know that. But I told her I will get more value out of the time and commitment I put into this than anybody else. And that's how it's always been. You take on making a difference for your patients. You take on being bigger than yourself. You will get more value than anybody else, even though you're for others. It just, you know, you can't not get the value. It really is that way. And you know, we kind of think, well, I don't just want to be for other people. I guarantee you it'll pay dividends in so many different ways. Mastery program assignment. There's going to be an assignment. Every time we have a webinar, you're going to be left with things to do, and this is going to be sent out to you. So here's some questions. Regarding certification, get clear for yourself. What do you stand for? This is a little bit different question. What's your personal commitment? This is your word. What do you stand for regarding your participation in certification? Regarding certification, what will you give your word to? For some of you, it might be you haven't sent x-rays in a year. For, you know, it could be any number of things. You got to look at it for yourself. Regarding certification, what empowering context can you create for yourself? So you could do this work and start noticing what's your current context. What can you invent? What conversation can you invent that would leave you empowered? Notice next is notice what thoughts or any situations get in your way regarding keeping your word. If so, what's the context or lack of structure that allows for the way those constraints occur? I do my best to bring power to my word, to keep my word, and it's always going out. I got news for you. Your word going out of place, don't be afraid of it. It's, I've heard it said that it's a mountain with no top. It's a constant climb. And the bigger you get, the more things you take on, the tougher it is to really keep that stuff in existence. But, you know, you can do it. And so the homework is going to be also not only for you, but it's going to get shared in your groups, and it's going to help you guys empower each other. And as another aspect, and we'll put people in groups. If you want somebody in your group, let us know. But you're going to be in contact with your group, and that'll get managed over the next week. And then here's the last thing. If you choose not to be in the mastery program, just contact Mary Pat. Say, look, it was nice. I really enjoyed the webinar, or I didn't enjoy the webinar at all. I thought, you know, Dr. Dickles was never going to shut up, and I don't want to be in it. Or if you want to be in it, you don't need to do anything. Start doing your homework. Start participating in your life for what you know your life is for. I want to thank you for who you're being. As I mentioned, we're going to go 5 minutes over. I appreciate who you are, but really thank you for being who you are. Not just, you know, again, the language is coming up a little bit different here today. The next webinar is going to be on Thursday, April 21st. We designed it that way because I want to have it after the NUCCA seminar. So it's a little bit more than a month away, but it's after the NUCCA seminar, and we're going to be taking a look at how to take the things that you've gotten from the NUCCA seminar and start to incorporate them into your practice, you know, as an expression of who you're committed to and being, and really that's so that was a little bit weak. So as an expression of the commitment and the expression of who you are. So we could open it up for some questions. That's the end of the webinar, and I'll stay on for a bit longer. We can answer some questions for you, and I'm going to have Mary Pat take over the controls. And if you have a question, questions, we could get you unmuted. You could type in your question, and we'll see if we can get those answered for you. Thank you very much for being on the webinar. I just love you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
So this is Mary Pat. I don't see any questions submitted or see anybody in the chat box that wants to.
Okay. Well, give them a second. They're probably all. Well, there's a couple things.
I do have one from Dr. Dombrowski asking, will we be assigned groups?
Yes.
So will they be assigned next week sometime, just to kind of give them an idea of
what is, yeah, within the next 7 days.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other
Not so
individuals?
far.
Okay, we'll just wait another minute.
Sure. See a lot of thank yous for you for doing this.
Awesome. Okay, then we can conclude the webinar. And Mary Pat, thank you so much for everything that you've done and will be continuing to do. And Craig, why don't I give you a call and then you and I can talk just for a few minutes, if that works for you.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Bye for now. I'm going to turn off my computer then. All right. Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.